afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon from Athens. My name is Alexia Tasouli. Good morning to the United States. And I'm happy that we're going to have today a digital discussion, a digital debate. And I'm going to coordinate this discussion between our two distinguished guests, two distinguished friends and speakers who will be joining us from the United States. Allow me first to express my gratitude to Peloponnesos newspaper, which is organizing the Regional Growth Conference, which is a public platform between politicians, regional officials, academics, and businessmen. It is a platform that gives to the people the connection, the ability to connect, the connection between Peloponnesos regional area and the European Union, and of course the United States, in order to exchange views and be around the global community. Allow me now to welcome our two speakers. Let me introduce you first to Mr. Christos Marafatsos, who is an entrepreneur and he's the advisor of the Trump campaign. Hello, Christos. Kalimera.
Kalimera, Alexia. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for accepting this invitation. Are you in the United States now?
Of course, yes. I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm in the nation's capital. And, it's a busy time during elections. We're only 7 days away. And really, I want to say thank you, Alexia, to you for hosting us, and also to Peloponnesos newspaper for having us. I saw that they were established in 1886, and what a fantastic history the newspaper has. So we're excited to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And the other speaker is going to be Mr. Eraklis Diamataris, who is the editor and publisher of Ethnikos Kirikas. Hello, Eraklis, to you. Yasu.
Hey, Yasu, Kalimera. Hi, Alexia. Hi, Christos. It's great to be with you. I'm coming to you from New York. And I would just like to say thank you also to Peloponnesos newspaper and for the Regional Growth Conference. Alexia, thank you for moderating this discussion. Really looking forward to getting into it with Christos at this pivotal day, 1 week exactly from the U.S. elections that has obviously far-reaching consequences, not just for our country, but for the world.
Well, here in Greece, the main focus of this election is the foreign policy. I mean, what's the next day of the United States will be in the foreign policy, either for Trump or for Biden. So allow me to ask you first on the foreign policy, and allow me to ask you first your estimations on the developments in Eastern Mediterranean. How do you see these developments are evolving, and about the Erdogan's behavior? And what do you see your the campaign of either Trump or Biden will evolve in case they will win for next year? Christos, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Alexia. That's a great question, especially with all the incidents happening by Turkey and President Erdogan. And I really think the world sees the Greece-US-Turkish relationship truly deteriorating. And that's not because of, that's not a one country issue, but we see the relationship with Turkey deteriorating from country to country. Just this week, we see the tiff and the taff between President Macron of France and the rest of Europe with Erdogan. Last week, we saw Turkey in the Middle East get into it with Saudi Arabia having a boycott. And over the last 4 years, under the leadership of President Trump, we've seen really, truly a deterioration between the relationship, the longstanding relationship between Turkey and the U.S. So, President Trump is someone that holds leaders like President Erdogan accountable. And we've seen it time and time again. President Trump is the only president in modern history to tariff and sanction Turkey and Erdogan, and also give him an open letter to the world stating that if he doesn't stop his unworthy and dangerous tactics to U.S. allies, he's going to single-handedly destroy the Turkish economy. So it's definitely concerning. It's more than concerning I think the only way you can describe Erdogan's actions as provocative, irrational, and disruptive to the entire Eastern Mediterranean, and that goes, that truly affects both Greece and Cyprus, and it's concerning. And I think from the day after the election, you're going to see President Trump keep Erdogan accountable at the same time with increasing U.S., Greece, and Cyprus relations. We've seen it over the last 4 years under Trump of having the Eastern Mediterranean as a key and reliable area, and having Greece as the most reliable ally in the East Med. So, the first day in office, we're going to see an increased relationship between Greece and the U.S., and we're going to continue seeing President Trump hold Erdogan accountable. Just last week, we had statements from the State Department and Secretary Pompeo calling for the actions of Turkey to stop against Greece and Cyprus, calling them provocative. So we'll continuously see the U.S. and the entire Trump administration keeping Erdogan accountable and making sure there's peace, stability in the Eastern Mediterranean, and keeping our relationship with Greece and Cyprus at the highest it's ever been.
Thank you very much, Christos. What do you think, Eraklis? What are your estimations on the Eastern Mediterranean developments? And do you agree that his actions are provocative of Erdogan, as Christos mentioned?
Yeah, Alexia, thank you for starting us off here, Christos. I think that, the Eastern Mediterranean is something that I know it's very tempting for Americans to be thinking inwardly during a, election with enormous consequences. But like I said at the beginning, the American election, it touches every part of the world. It's just America's role in the world. And that's something that is troubling me over the last few years with the Trump administration, Alexia, America's place in the world. We are seeing an abdication of American leadership across the board. In traditional positions where America would mediate disputes, we are seeing actors like Germany, France stepping in to traditional American roles. The problem being that we are seeing more and more Germany in particular just saying words in terms of keeping Erdogan. And I understand it's a very tricky position for the Chancellor Merkel because of the large German minority in Turkish minority in Germany. But at the end of the day, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the United States at the highest level. President Trump and President Erdogan, they get along, and we want an American president to get along with foreign leaders. However, Erdogan is behaving more and more like a tyrant. He's a wannabe sultan, and we cannot keep giving him free passes. I commend that we are telling them that this is not acceptable, that these are provocative actions, but we need something with teeth behind it. Diplomats like Ambassador Pyatt in Athens they're doing a great job. The lower level diplomats are doing a great job, but the tone needs to be set at the top. Secretary Pompeo went twice to Greece. That was symbolic, and we need to deepen those defensive cooperations. But at the end of the day, we're talking about Greece and Cyprus, two European Union members that are being confronted by the same menace. As Foreign Minister Dendias last week said, if you look around the region, most of the large-scale foreign policy issues are being caused by a single source, and that's Turkey. We have to hold Erdogan and his cronies accountable, not only for Greece and Cyprus's borders, but the ecumenical patriarchate in Constantinople. These are very, very critical issues, and I am worried that we are seeing a pattern where President Trump, in addition to not condemning Vladimir Putin, seems to be cozying up to dictator, despot-like leaders the world over. It is very troublesome. The United States cannot have any relationship other than an aggressive one towards them, because they need to get the message that this is no way to behave with supposed allies.
Christos, Eraklis mentioned that Germany is spending having an American's role, in a sense that Germany has a mediation role instead of United States regarding the Greek-Turkish relationship. What do you think about the Germany's role in the United States? Has replaced United States role, Germany?
Look, I agree with a lot of Eraklis' statements regarding how important it is to keep Erdogan accountable. And that's why we've had, for the first time in modern history, a U.S. president, increase the U.S.-Greece relations while at the same time decrease the U.S.-Turkish relations. Alexia, if you saw under a Biden-Obama administration, they had a pro-Turkish agenda, just like most of the administrations before that. And now, for the first time in history, we have a leader, one that steps into issues and fixes them. Germany is a major country in the EU. They also should be participating in conversations like this. The fact that they haven't brought solutions is concerning. They're a major factor, if not the biggest, in the European Union. The US always and will continue to stand by Greece. We have so more than any other administration in modern history, and President Trump will continue to be there. But in terms of holding Erdogan accountable, we've seen it time and time again. And it's not just through empty words like our friend Joe Biden, after 47 years, who's done close to nothing for the Greek-American community or U.S.-Greece relations. What typically politicians like Biden are good at is spending 47 years listening to the issues and being a great sounding board, not providing any policies or trade agreements or any sort of constructive ways to advance the issue. We've seen that with President Trump. We've seen the U.S. take a complete and utter focus in the Eastern Mediterranean and using Greece as the pillar of stability within that region. That was never the case before.
Eraklis, what do you think Biden will do if he's elected towards Erdogan's policy? Because we still don't know exactly if he will change his policy on Turkey or what's his relations with the president of Turkey right now.
Right. I just want to go back just really quickly to something that Christos said. I understand that, as I actually said before, if you talk to the ambassador of Greece to the United States, if you talk to the ambassador of the United States to Greece, they will tell you much the same thing as the military will tell you, that Greece-U.S. relations haven't been this high, perhaps ever. And so that is a very positive thing. But in terms of keeping Erdogan accountable, we're seeing the situation unfolding with Armenia and Azerbaijan. We saw the abdication of American leadership in the Middle East, namely with abandoning our Kurdish allies in Syria. And we've created a vacuum that Erdogan has been all too happy to fill with his own forces. So we are sending a message in a very volatile area that our word doesn't mean a whole lot, because we left the Kurdish people to their own devices. We had them as our most important ally in the fight against ISIS. Just because ISIS, the caliphate, is not on a map right now, it doesn't mean that Islamic extremists aren't still plotting, damage to the United States and their allies. So we have to be able to look our allies in the eyes and say, we're going to do this, and then for them to react in a way that signals that they believe us. So we had a lot of damage done with especially the Kurdish fighters who've been fighting valiantly against extremism in the neighborhood. In terms of what a president, Joe Biden, would do, I think that's one of the things that he's been knocked on, his long record, right? His 47 years in public service. I think that's what America needs right now. I think we need a diplomatic reset in our way that we engage the rest of the world. The State Department has been gutted, Alexia. The State Department down in Foggy Bottom, since Secretary Pompeo took over, I mean, there are floors of empty desks that were just never filled. A lot of them were chalked up to partisan appointments the first time around, and they said that they would get to it. But the reality of the situation is that the State Department's been hollowed out, which compromises our ability to engage our allies in an effective way. We need to fill those positions with competent people, not partisan people. And we need to be able to delegate the responsibilities into the right hands, because, President Biden, should he be elected, would need to sit down with these leaders, would need to sit down with Erdogan, would need to sit down with these people and say, you know what, there is a price to pay here. We have the ability, along with partners. That's the big thing here, that a President Biden will bring countries together instead of trying to go at it alone with an isolationist policy. The United States of America has been at its best when it is the leader of broad coalitions. We saw it with George H.W. Bush in the first Gulf War. We saw it with the Paris Climate Accord. When countries come together with America leading from the front, because that's America's place in the world. It's leading from the front. We can't just be some spectator here. This region is only going to get more volatile through the presence of social media and all that stuff. You have a more radicalized environment. We need a reset. And Joe Biden knows these people. He knows these people from his extensive career in the Senate and as vice president. He has the respect of these leaders. They know his record on Russia. They know all of that. So this is the biggest thing that we can do with our foreign policy under a President Joe Biden is removing the mystery. We cannot behave unpredictably. We need to be more predictable so our allies can depend on us and we can restore American credibility.
Right.
If I can respond to that, Alexia?
Yes, of course, Christos.
So one thing is President Trump recognizes the instability in this Eastern Mediterranean. That's why he has concrete steps to stabilize it. And in terms of actions, just 2 weeks ago, the U.S. has sent one of its largest naval fleets into Greece, stationed permanently in Suda Bay. That's the USS Woody Herschel. That's an amazing act by a U.S. president to show the world, one, who his ally is, which is Greece and the United States, and also making sure that, hey, we're not playing games. And not only we're not playing games, but we'll beef up our U.S. military presence with Greece, in Greece, and sending a message to the world. Also, we have significant investments from the U.S. into Suda Bay. That's another concrete action by the U.S. president. Those aren't things that we can just turn a blind eye on. Those aren't things that Joe Biden has ever thought of. And in terms of all this instability, which Eraklis you mentioned, which is very concerning with Armenia and Azerbaijan, 100%. Turkey has to be accountable for everything that they're doing. And what did we see President Trump do? We saw him just 2 days ago announce a temporary peace, a temporary ceasefire between both countries, allowing temporary stability while he intervenes. And as the U.S., as they always do, find a solution. And we've seen it time and time again. How about the just completely eliminating the ISIS caliphate? Not only that, but we actually have, for the first time ever, peace in the Middle East. We have historic historic peace agreements that never thought would be possible in modern history. And who do we have do it? We have President Trump. So President Trump isn't someone that announces. He's an extremely tough leader, but more importantly, he's a person that gets the job done, and he does that through policies and agreements and actions. And we've seen it time and time again with Greece and U.S. relations. Prime Minister Mitsotakis says it himself. U.S.-Greece relations is at its all-time high. President Trump says it. Secretary Pompeo 2 weeks ago was in Greece. He said the same thing. The U.S.-Greece relationship is the strongest in decades. These things aren't said lightly. They're said because actions were taken, and Greece and U.S. feel that their relationship is at the strongest point in history. And in a win election by President Trump, it will continue to do that. We will see President Trump continue being together with Greece, protecting Greece and Cyprus, and stabilizing the Eastern Mediterranean. As Eraklis, as we both agree, and I believe we're 100% on the same side, is that things are a bit out of hand and it has to be managed. And the answer, in my opinion, is a President Trump presidency.
The last comment from you, Eraklis, in order to move on to the next section. if you want to add something.
Yeah, I do. Christo, you were absolutely right that we agree on that last point there. And I just wanted to add another thing that a President Biden would do is to reinforce kind of what I said before regarding our allies, NATO. That is something that we are going to talk about, I'm sure, at some other point and more in depth in this conversation. But, NATO is our buffer. It was created as a buffer against Russia. Obviously, things have changed, but Russia remains a threat. NATO has been continually undermined by this administration because it's not using partnerships the way that they were intended to be used. And we are in a very lucky situation with Greece where they're actually paying the percentage of the NATO defense budget. They've consistently done that. But what it's doing is we're doing Russia's bidding by undermining the confidence in NATO. So right now we have a situation in the Eastern Med where you have Greece and Turkey, 2 NATO members. And obviously Cyprus is not one of those nations. And we can get to that in the Cyprus portion. I have some feelings about that. But the United States is the leader of NATO. You can't tell me that the United States can't step in there and get the NATO alliance on track. Why is Turkey still a part of NATO? Mm-hmm. The United States must demand for Turkey to be removed from NATO. It is unacceptable that a member of that alliance on a daily basis, well, not hyperbolic, on a daily basis, challenges militarily its ally. I mean, it's fomenting instability in the whole region, and that's just not what an alliance should be. At least that's not how they drafted NATO. And if it has changed, maybe they should say so. But as it currently stands now, and as the whole world understands it, NATO, and with the United States leading from the front, which I'm sure that it will under a Biden presidency, they must demand that if Turkey does not stop these provocations, that they will be removed as a NATO alliance member.
So that will be Biden's proposal in his administration to propose that Turkey should leave NATO, whether he continues to provoke Greece and the international community.
Yes, I think that if it continues to deteriorate the way that it is now, there are only a certain amount of things that you can do. There's only a certain amount of press releases that you can send from the State Department. You have to let these people know that they just cannot. And again, the qualms aren't with the Turkish people. The qualm is with Erdogan and his government, who you can very liberally say were not democratically elected last time. So the qualm is with that government, and the government needs to know that there are consequences to their actions, and hopefully the Turkish people will have a say in a change in leadership there so that the region can be stable once more.
Right.
I think the person to ask on whether on why Turkey is still a NATO partner is Joe Biden. Why, after 47 years of serving the U.S. government at the highest levels and serving on the foreign intelligence committees and serving as vice president, has he not raised that issue once? And to your point, Eraklis, NATO is important. President Trump recognizes that. But it just so happens that very few countries, with the exception of Greece, which President Trump, I don't know how many times we've heard him congratulate Greece on contributing 2% of its GDP to its NATO contribution, but no one else has. So you have countries like the US, like Greece, who's paying its fair share. And if people aren't paying, how is NATO going to be the force and effectively, which you say it needs to be? How is it going to be so? The US can't be the only one. We are leading, but it can't be the only one. NATO is a group of countries. So we have a pragmatic, proactive president that sees an issue with NATO, that sees the inefficiencies and brought a solution. It's saying, hey, everyone, pay your fair share. We need this to be the force it is, and it was, because it isn't now. But under President Trump, that has changed. We've seen country after country after country pay its fair share, which is much fairer to countries like the U.S. and Greece.
Alexia, do I have a minute to
jump
in there? Or are we
just
going
1 minute in order to move to the next topic. Yes,
okay.
Just 1 minute. Yes.
Sorry, yeah. I totally understand the criticism of the 47 years with Joe Biden being on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and for vice president. The fact of the matter is that Erdogan has been more emboldened in the last half decade than he has been at any point in his leadership reign, I'll call it. There is a reason for that. He didn't try many of these things before because he knew that there would be consequences. President Trump has been president for 4 years. So to say that Joe Biden didn't do anything for 47 years, I mean, that's an attack that the Trump campaign uses on a whole breadth of issues. But the fact remains is that this man has been president for 4 years, and at no point in the last 4 years, in the last year, it's gotten very bad in that region. There has been so many opportunities. Why is Mike Pompeo, who's visited, as you said, and as I said, he visited twice. He should have said that in Athens. Erdogan has been more unstable in the last 5 years, at the end of the Obama years, going into the Trump years, than he's ever been. So the need to do something like this wasn't as grave, and now it is. And this man's been president for 4 years. We cannot keep talking about President Trump like it's 2016 or 2017. This man's been in office for almost 4 years. We can't just keep saying, the Obama this, Obama that. There has to be some accountability.
Yeah, and that's why U.S.-Greece relations are at an all-time high. I'm not just saying it. President Trump is saying it. Secretary Pompeo is saying it. Prime Minister Mitsotakis is saying it. And it's not just for no reason. President Trump has done and has kept Turkey and President Erdogan accountable. Like I said, he's the only president in modern history to both tariff and sanction President Erdogan and Turkey. No one else has. So yes, things are escalating. That's why we need someone like Trump, who's strong and who holds dictators accountable. And we have to bring up the 47-year track record of Joe Biden, because what else are we going to look back to? We have to keep him accountable to what he's done, and most importantly, what he hasn't done. And just so happens that after 47 years, that's probably, Eraklis, that's probably what, 50% older than us. I'm about 33. So 47 years, that's impressive. That's your political status quo. You can sit there, get nothing done, and then when you're close to 80 years old, run for president. It's not working like that. The guy hasn't come out of his house in the last few weeks. He holds one campaign rally almost a day. It's sad. He's not a leader. He's not someone that can even remotely stand up to someone like Erdogan. He's not the person he was 8 years ago as vice president. And even as vice president, he failed to champion and progress and advance Greece's interests and the U.S. interests.
Okay, shall we move now to the next section, because we don't have much time. Let's go and discuss about the COVID subject, which is a world subject, and things are getting out of control. And I think United States have a difficult situation to handle. And let me ask you, Eraklis, can you please describe me the situation now in the United States and what the Biden campaign is facing in order to control the pandemic?
Yeah, Alexia, the situation here in the United States is rapidly deteriorating. The scientists warned us about it in the spring. They said that this is not the darkest that it's going to be. Unfortunately, we have a twin-demic now with flu season coming on and the COVID pandemic, where you have people going into fall. In some states, it's getting colder. You're getting people congregating indoors, and that's just a recipe for disaster. What is indisputable is that President Trump didn't bring over this pandemic. This was going to come, and it was going to kill a lot of people. The problem here is the handling of this crisis. We heard on tape, his own voice, Bob Woodward's tapes in January, that President Trump knew that this was more lethal than the flu. He knew that it was past airborne, and he knew that it would not only kill old people, but it can infect anybody, and it could be lethal for anybody. So there is nowhere to hide from those statements, because he made them himself, and you hear it in his own voice. Joe Biden right now doesn't have a plan that is different than the stated plan of the Trump administration. The difference is that he would implement it, listening to the scientists making a mask national mandate should the scientists say so, and shutting down areas of the country that the scientist tells him to be shut down. The Trump campaign keeps erroneously claiming that Joe Biden wants to shut down America and destroy the economy. He doesn't want to do that. Joe Biden understands that to fix the ailing economy, you have to get the pandemic under control, because consumer confidence, joblessness, these problems aren't going to go away if people don't feel safe. And to get these numbers, I mean, we are having 80,000 cases a day here. We're losing close to 1,000 of our citizens. There's over 226,000 dead people in the United States. We have 40 states in the red zone. You're seeing some places having to take measures. We have ICU beds up to capacity. This isn't some hoax. This is real science, and these are real facts. And the reality is, Alexia, it didn't need to be this bad. So the situation, to answer your question, in the United States is not looking good. And it really does pain me to say that. I don't mean to fearmonger. I just see it. And, New York went through a traumatic time in the spring. And I'm very, very concerned that the states that we are seeing these spikes in are states that never really shut down. Mm-hmm. And we have the president going around the country, as you said, Christo, having, some rallies, and Joe Biden can have rallies, but it's not the prudent thing to do health-wise. He's having super spreader events around the country. And now we're seeing the lag of 2 weeks finally catching up. So now we're seeing spikes in Wisconsin and places where there were rallies. Like, you can link this stuff. It's not rocket science. It's basic science. And we have to listen to the healthcare experts.
What do you think, Christos? How did Trump handle the situation of the pandemic?
Yeah, there's a lot of points that were said there. I think most importantly is that, starting off with one dying American is too many. One death is too much. This disease and virus is horrible. It's not something that any country was prepared for. And given that, President Trump has done a great job and has been successful at leading a country that has 330 million citizens in over 50 states. When there was a first case of a coronavirus reported in China, President Trump in early January of this year shut down travel from US and China. He was the first foreign leader to do so. At the same time he did that, we had Joe Biden come on stage and say how xenophobic and racist President Trump is for stopping US travel to China. Those are the kind of statements that we've seen from Joe Biden. And President Trump
will that situation change whether Biden will be elected president?
Alexia, it's a very interesting question. It's a complicated answer, honestly, and it's something that it's something really only the diaspora can understand. People like Christos, where the love of Greece, sometimes it doesn't make best business decision. Yeah, the best business decision is oftentimes not investing in Greece, but we do so anyway out of sheer patriotism and because of our roots. Mm-hmm. The reason why you see apprehension, however, recently is not only because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but in the last few years, as Greece has gotten out of the previous economic crisis, and as the United States in recent years also has bounced back completely from our own recession in 2009, we have a pro-American prime minister in Greece, finally. But the question is the trust that an American or an Australian Greek or anybody like that has in dealing Greece. We all have stories from the diaspora of working in Greece where things were not kept up in a contract. Things cost more than they were told about up front. The corruption, the red tape, getting accessibility to projects only to have them torn under you, like the carpet being pulled out from under you at the very last moment if you didn't give a politician or a business interest money. It's not the way to conduct business. It's a big turnoff for serious investors from abroad. But we are seeing now a more concentrated approach and a laxing of these regulations and a more business-friendly administration that is trying to inspire that confidence, because there's a government in place in Greece now that understands that it needs that foreign capital. And if it's from people with Greek roots, even better. So there has to be that understanding that over many decades that trust was eroded, but it seems that in the last year and a half or so, we have finally gotten to a point where investors are looking at Greece for energy, for just a lot of tech, for a lot of industry. So Greece has a lot of growth, and finally Greeks are feeling a little bit more confident in the investments. Obviously, 2020 is a little difficult with COVID, but we're moving in the right direction. But just to answer your question, there was a lot of long-standing trust issues.
What do you think, Christos? Was it the trust issue the last years for not investing?
I think Eraklis' response was spot on. Great description, Eraklis. I will add and contribute to the fact that Greece is finally a pro-American. Greece has a pro-American government in place. Prime Minister Mitsotakis has done such a good job at promoting Greece as a place where outside investors can come and feel protected and be successful. Most importantly, there has to be a regulatory environment in place where investors can trust, and that's what this Greek administration has done in promoting Greece as a place to invest. And we've seen it under the last 4 years where Americans have come to Greece and invested, and it's been under President Trump. Just last month, we saw our Greek American, Michael Kratsios, who's the chief technology officer under President Trump, and come and sign with Minister Georgiadis, the U.S. Science and Technology Agreement. That single-handedly is paving the way for large U.S. companies like Amazon, like Tesla, like Pfizer, like Microsoft to invest billions into Greece. And what did we see, Alexia? Just 1 week after that agreement was signed, we had Microsoft announce $1 billion investment in Greater Athens, investing in technology jobs and promising to hire over 100,000 Greeks by 2025, I believe. Right. And not only that, we've seen an increase in trade. In 2019, Alexia, the U.S. and Greece had over $3 billion in trade between our respective countries. So we've seen a lot of progress. Greece has come a long way. It's come a long way under the Trump administration. They're doing a fantastic job. The next generation of Greek citizens are doing a fantastic job. They're educated, they're innovative, and they are single-handedly declaring the future of Greece. I can't be more proud to be a Greek and American, as with Eraklis, and I look forward to the future of U.S.-Greece relations and Greek Americans continuing to invest in Greece.
I would like to thank you both for this very good discussion. I hope you enjoyed it a lot, as much as I did. Thank you very much for this participation. I hope to have both of you a good election process. May the best win. And ladies and gentlemen, the conference will take place the 3rd of June in Patra, the 3rd to 5 of June. And you're all welcome to be there. And let us hope that COVID will allow us for you to be there and to travel to Greece and to Patra. Ευχαριστώ πολύ, Ηρακλή. Ευχαριστώ πολύ, Χρήστο. I hope to see you soon again.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ, Ηρακλή. Γεια σας. Happy Orchid Day.
Yes, happy Orchid Day. Thank you.